Blast Off: How Mary Sherman Morgan Fueled America into Space by Suzanne Slade, illustrated by Wern, Comport. Mary Sherman grew up on a farm in North Dakota with 4 older brothers and sisters. But there was always too much work for too few hands. Though women had been able to vote for nearly 10 years, Mary couldn't vote about her chores. All day long she fed chickens, milked cows, and cleaned the creamer. Until one day, the sheriff and a social service woman came calling. They said 8-year-old Mary belonged in school. It was the law. All the children at school knew how to read except Mary. She didn't even know the alphabet. Mary worked hard to catch up, but she had to keep up with her chores too. While milking the cows, she studied the sound of each letter. And before long, she was reading stacks of books. Mary loved learning, and her favorite subject was science. In high school, Mary fell hopelessly in love with chemistry. She was fascinated by how tiny atoms made up everything: her desk, books, and even the twinkling stars. Mary longed to study chemistry in college, but her parents wanted her home doing chores. So, Mary devised a plan. She worked several jobs, applied for scholarships, and saved every penny. After graduating as a valedictorian of her high school class, she hopped a bus bound for Ohio. Valedictorian means you have the best grades in the class. So that's really cool. In her college chemistry class, Mary learned how atoms react with each other to create energy, heat, and light. But after 2 years, Mary ran out of money and had to leave school. A nearby lab called Plumbrook needed help making supplies for soldiers. Many of their chemists had left to serve in World War II. Mary landed a job at Plumbrook, where she worked with chemicals that created powerful energy explosions. Years later, the war ended. No war meant no job. Mary searched for a career where she could nurture her passion for chemistry. Fortunately, a lab at North American Aviation in California was looking for chemists to design fuel for rockets that would explore space. And to Mary, it sounded like the best job in the world. But the ad said college degree. And Mary only had half a degree, but she knew she could do the work. The man at the employment desk was surprised to see Mary. So were the men waiting to apply for jobs. But Mary didn't care how much they stared or glared. She wasn't about to give up. The engineering supervisor believed science was for men, not women. All 900 scientists in his department were men. Intent on proving him wrong, Mary handed him her resume showing why she was the perfect candidate. Top grades in college chemistry classes, 3 years experience in a science lab, letters stating she was a hardworking chemist. The man was baffled. Mary had the right qualifications, but she was a woman. A very determined woman. He decided to take a chance. Mary was thrilled to be back in a lab. She studied how rocket fuels acted in different situations, under pressure, in hot and cold temperatures, and mixed with other fuels. Mary discovered each fuel had its own personality, just like her coworkers. Some were hotheads, others were calm and stable, and some didn't mix well with others. Using a slide rule, Mary made calculations that told her exactly how each fuel mixture would make a rocket fly, without launching a single rocket. After years of hard work and experiments and occasional explosions, Mary became the rocket fuel expert. One day, Mary's lab received a top-secret project: create the fuel to launch a rocket carrying America's first satellite into space. As it circled Earth, the satellite would collect information about space, like temperature and radiation levels. This would help engineers design future spacecraft for astronauts. But this plan had a top secret problem. No one could find a fuel to make the rocket fly properly, not even the rocket designer or his team. The assignment was complicated. The engineering supervision needed his best man for the job. But everyone knew the best man was Mary. Mary bravely accepted the assignment. She couldn't wait to help America blast into space. She received 2 assistants. Both had engineering degrees, but no experience working with fuels. It was up to Mary to solve this colossal problem. If she didn't, America might give up on space exploration altogether. First, she listed every rocket fuel: hydrazine, aniline, ethylene, and more. She needed one that was safe, easy to get, stable at high temperatures, and it had to create enough energy to push a rocket and a satellite into space. Mary scribbled pages of computations. She pushed buttons on her mechanical calculator. Some fuels created the right amount of heat, but not enough power. Others produced the perfect power, but weren't stable. All the numbers said the same thing. None of the fuels would work. Mary had an idea. Could she mix 2 fuels together to make something new? Her pen scratched out calculations, and finally she found a mixture that worked. On paper. But how would it burn in a real rocket engine? Mary ordered a batch of her fuel concoction called hydine. Then she headed out to the Hill, a secluded desert area. She needed to see how the fuel burned during an engine test on the ground. Technicians poured her new fuel into an engine. Would it fire properly or ignite a deadly disaster? Mary and the team held their breath. Soon the engine roared to life. The ground shuddered like a powerful earthquake. Seconds later, the engine stopped. Mary checked her numbers, but didn't find any mistakes. They began the test again. The engine fired a second time and then suddenly shut down. Frustrated, Mary ordered a third test, but it failed too. Mary returned to her lab. She poured piles of numbers into new computations. She ordered more tests. One by one, each failed. Frustrated engineers, technicians, and scientists all looked for something or someone to blame. The engine design isn't right. The fuel is wrong. Mary should be replaced with a man. Mary made more calculations. Engineers changed how the fuel flowed into the engine, and then everyone trudged back to the hill. As the engine ignited, Mary crossed her fingers. If it didn't work, would people give up on the project? The engine roared and kept roaring. After 2 more successful tests, Mary's fuel was ready to fly, but the project couldn't launch yet. Engineers had to prepare the rocket and satellite for flight. Officials had to file the proper paperwork, and the rocket designer needed to approve everything. Meanwhile, Navy engineers were furiously working on a different rocket that they hoped would launch America's first satellite into space. On December 6, 1957, reporters anxiously watched as the Navy's mighty Vanguard rocket lifted off. 2 seconds later, it fell to the ground and exploded in a ball of fire. The country was devastated. Many Americans decided space travel was too hard, too expensive, and way too dangerous. But not Mary. She knew exploring space would lead to important future discoveries. 2 months later, and more than 2 years after Mary's first concocted iodine, technicians finally poured her fuel into a huge Juno 1 rocket. Stars sparkled in the night sky while America silently worried. Will this be another launch disaster? Mary held her trusty slide rule tight as the countdown began. She knew the numbers couldn't lie, and her pages of numbers said this rocket was going into space. A hiss of white vapor swirled around the rocket. The fuel ignited. Liftoff. Flames spewed from the rocket as it slowly crawled up the black sky. Mary's fuel burned smooth and steady as it pushed the rocket faster, higher. Then, right on schedule, the rocket released America's first satellite into space. It began circling Earth, exploring the spectacular wonders of space, fueled by Mary's concoction. The groundbreaking mission inspired a nation, and that was just the beginning. And this is a bunch of information about Mary and her work. And then this is about the rockets. And these are the technicians that monitor. A couple other photos. All right. Well, good night. I love you.